Use Management Committee, the Everett Roybal Public Works Room. Been joined by Honorable Council Member Jack Weiss. The good news is that quite a few items are consent, and not as many speaker cards as I thought we would for the number of items we have. So I want to thank you for coming to City Hall and making the trek over to this building and actually finding parking. When you come up to the microphone, and you can tell that the acoustics, it's not the best room for hearing the speakers, especially when you have a fire truck blaring down the street. But if you have to have a conversation, please take it outside. When you do come up to the microphone, give us your name and address. And I know some of you have written very eloquent letters, but we have 2 minutes. So you get to the heart of your message, the meat of your letter. We would appreciate that very much. If there is a thought or a message or an idea you want to give us when we go through these deliberations, we want to hear it. But if something's already been said, it's okay to say I agree with the previous speaker and tell us something different or new. So just keep an eye on that 2-minute clock and I think we'll do great. I want to welcome Gail Goldberg, our planning director, for joining us. We do have one individual who is being valiant and being reappointed to the Harbor APC, Ms. Joanne Vike. If I can ask her to come to the microphone. I know this is a reappointment. Is she here today? Hi, good afternoon.
Okay.
Please give us your name.
My name is Joanne Valley, and my address is 19401 South Vermont, Suite G104, Harbor Gateway, Torrance 90502.
So you're ready for a second round?
Actually, this will be my third appointment by
third.
a third mayor,
Okay.
so I'm really excited.
Good, good. Are the meetings as long as you thought they'd be?
Our meetings are kind of sparse, unfortunately, but I love the commission. I think
Good.
it's a wonderful commission to be on. It's really a way to serve the community in a very special way.
Great. Well, I want to thank you for your time and your contribution to the city and your commitment to making the communities healthier and stronger. And I would hope to see you in council for your confirmation, unless there's questions from my colleague. You got the 2 thumbs up here. So thank you for making the trek, and look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you very much.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
day. Okay. And perhaps, okay, I have more speaker cards coming in, so I've been warned. Perhaps we can ask our director, Gail Goldberg, for her report. Then we'll dive into the rest of the agenda.
Thank you very much, Chairman Reyes. I too spent a bit of the last few weeks on vacation, so I'm glad to be back and welcome you back so we can all get back to work. There were a couple of things that occurred over the past few weeks that I thought, excuse me, I might share with you today as important, I think, information. One of the things that's been of concern to many of you is the fact that the planning department currently has more than 80 vacancies within our department, and this impacts, of course, our ability to get the entire work program done and to meet all of your priorities. So I wanted to report to you that in the past few weeks, we have received 2 separate sets of approval through the managed hiring process, and we were given permission in total to fill 60 vacancies. And while we are very excited about this, and it will still take some time to go through the personnel process, I wanted to sort of alert or warn everyone that many of the vacancies that we are filling are mandatory promotions from within. And so it will actually take several waves of backfilling behind those folks before we actually create new capacity in the department. So the 60 vacancies that we're filling, the majority of them will be promotions. And so it will still take us a while to work down in terms of the backfilling, because we'll have to go back and get additional permission for the backfills. So I wanted to let you know we are going to be doing those promotions and hirings, and as excited as we are, I wanted to alert you that it still will take a while before we actually can create new capacity within the department. The second thing I wanted to mention to you is that over the past 2 weeks, the city controller has initiated a new audit to evaluate the effectiveness and efficiency of the city's process to ensure that the conditions placed on development are actually met by the developers. And I think you are aware this is also an important part of our 12-to-2 discussion.
Right.
And is an important part of a new tracking system that we are putting in place. So we actually see this as an opportunity to really avail ourselves of some outside consultant work to help us make absolutely certain that the things we are doing will solve the problems, to make sure that in the future we do adequately manage all of the conditions that are placed on development. So I wanted to let you know that was ongoing, and that we have already met with the auditors once, and I have invited the auditors to come to our 12-to-2 meeting with all of the departments, and we actually see this as a good thing and a way to perhaps be even a little more effective in terms of our solutions. So those are the two things I wanted to share with you today.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that, and look forward to seeing the implementation phase of our community plan efforts. And I know sometimes a ship this big goes in one direction, and change it does take time. So kudos to you and the staff for the results that are being generated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Lee? No, okay.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. All righty. Thank you, Director Goldberg. So let's dive into the agenda, and we'll start through the various items. And Roberto, let's start with item number 2.
Before we go on, Councilman, we did have one card that was submitted late on item number 1. I don't know if you still want to hear the public comment for that particular item.
Item
since it's
number
on
1?
by now.
I know, I saw that, and
It was submitted late. It's at the very beginning of the speaker stat. It's at the very beginning of the speaker
Yes.
stat, under 1.
I saw that, and I think they had it dash item 15.
Okay.
So it looked like item
Right.
1.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Okay, so before we get to number 1, Roberta, let's just go through the consent items. So folks who are here for other items will know our direction as far as the items we can move. So item number 3 will continue for 2 weeks. It'll be back here in Plum. Items 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, as well as 11 and 12 are all consent items.
We have speaker cards on item number 7.
7, oh, thank you, Barbara. So we'll hold that one. We'll hold item number 7. But we do have 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 on consent. Then item 13 will continue to October 17th, and hopefully in council on October 21.
Councilman, item 13 is continued to October 7th.
October 7th? Yes, that's what I just said.
Yes.
And in council, October 21.
Yes.
So it'll be October 7th for item number 13. 14 and 15 are special. We just heard from the director's report, and we don't have a report on item 17. Okay, so that fairly much clears the table, except for a few items. So we'll go back to item number 2. Roberto, can you?
Sure. Item 2, Councilman, is a motion by Councilman Wise, seconded by yourself. It's instructing planning, building and safety, and city attorney to make revisions to the city sign ordinance. And I believe this is a referral to staff.
We do have several cards, about 3 or 4. So would you like to speak to it? You want to hear the cards first? Okay. So on cue, we'll have Francisco Rivera. Please give us your name and address. Dennis Hathaway and Will Wright.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Francisco Rivera, and my address is 1501 West 8th Street, Los Angeles, 900117. I'm the president of the National Central American Roundtable, and I am here to talk about item 208-2020. Dear members of the Plum Committee, now that the City of Los Angeles is considering a revision of the regulation and ordinances related to billboards, including advertising signage, there is the fundamental need to look at the situation of murals. The city should not be in the business of hurting small businesses. The owners paint, their buildings, and then they are ordered to remove the paint. So it is imperative, to have clear guidelines and provide the flexibility for artistic murals to be left alone. And there is a particular case, in the Westlake area where a business owner, has a beautiful mural, but somehow an inspector came and deemed that was not legal, and everybody in the community is in love with that mural, and that exemplifies all in the citywide. So this is a very important issue, critical, and please, now that the revision is, please have in consideration that in favor, that there should be a regulation for billboards, the ornate of the city, of course, but be sensitive to this. Thank you.
Mr. Rivera, and I appreciate you bringing this up. There is a gray area in how these murals or art pieces, how do you interpret their status, if you will? And that's a gray area we want to clear up.
Yes, there is the need to have, cultural affairs and the historical, also the other commissions related to this. And because there are beautiful murals, that all of us should be in agreement that they need to be preserved. So, but there is qualified people and consultants, to do this.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Our next speaker is Dennis Hathaway, and then Will Wright.
Good afternoon. My name is Dennis Hathaway. I'm president of the Coalition to Ban Billboard Blight. We obviously support this ordinance. It's critically important that we have a sign ordinance in the city that will stand up to all these court challenges. But there are 2 issues with this that I'd like to stress. One is that it is very important to us that there be significant public input into this rewriting of the sign ordinance so that neighborhoods, communities that have had issues with signage get to have a seat at the table, so to speak, to have their voices heard in this, because we know that the sign companies and those interests will definitely make their voices heard. The other issue is that we really believe that the city should suspend any discretionary approvals of signs or sign districts until this ordinance is in place. It doesn't make any sense to do that. And that includes the conversions of, where there's discretionary approval of conversions of conventional billboards to digital billboards. And I don't know how that would be done with an amendment to this motion or to a separate motion, but we would really feel it's important to have that in place as part of this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Will Wright.
Hello. Thank you for letting me take the time to speak to you. My name is Will Wright. I work for the American Institute of Architects, and I have a letter that I'll submit, but I just wanted to read a couple paragraphs. The LA chapter of the American Institute of Architects wishes to be on record in support of the subject motion made by the 5 of your council colleagues and seconded by Councilmember Reyes. We also urge that the City of Los Angeles adopt an interim control ordinance that prohibits the erection of any new off-site signs within the City of LA except in signage supplement SUD districts and creative signage districts already approved and adopted before the day of the motion. AIA believes that during the interim control period, the city should solicit recommendations from a panel of citizens and professionals. Those recommendations should then be utilized to debate and adopt a citywide policy that consistently regulates off-site signs. And more of the letters in here. So thank you for your time, and I'll record it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. That concludes the public hearing portion of this item. And Councilor Weiss?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to make a couple of very brief comments, and I first want to thank you, Mr. Chair, for not just seconding the motion, but for scheduling it right away, and for recognizing that it is important that the redrafting of this, what's called package of ordinances, that process needs to begin right away, and I want to thank you personally and in front of all those folks for making sure this happened. I want the folks who came here today and the folks who didn't know that these things don't just happen automatically, that it is up to it's the chair's discretion which of these items go forward, and I appreciate that. And I know that Ms. Goldberg understands the challenges that we face here and understands how important it is to go forward with this process, particularly before we lose more ground, frankly, with the proliferation of the supergraphics that are being wrapped around buildings in this city. And so I want to thank you and your staff in advance for getting to work on this and hopefully getting it done sooner rather than later. I will tell the members of the public who spoke today, yes, there will be, it's a completely public process. There will be plenty, Mr. Hathaway, plenty of public input. But I do want to just suggest to you that time is also of the utmost urgency here, and time is not your friend if you take the position that you do. And so I just hope that you will work with us to try to make this process move as quickly and smoothly as possible. This is going to be a very, very, very difficult needle through which to thread anything. And I hope that all the advocates in this process will really be helpful in trying to get something accomplished here. And it wouldn't be possible at all if it weren't for Mr. Reyes and Ms. Goldberg. And I just thank you very much for making this a possibility at this stage.
Thank you, Councilmember. Appreciate that. Okay, so we will be referring this motion to the Planning Department in consultation with the Department of Building and Safety and the City Attorney's Office. And hopefully we'll have some traction in moving this particular motion.
And finally, to the gentleman who spoke about murals, that's certainly not my intent. That's not the goal of this at all. I don't have a view on I've read the articles in the paper. I don't have a view about that, but that's whatever you call that issue. That's not what this legislation is designed to address.
Okay, so that concludes item number 2. Our next item.
That would be item 7, Councilman. I believe there's a speaker's card, and this is a zone change in CD 6. It has to do with the demolition of 11 single-family dwellings and the construction of 65 condo units.
Okay, let's have a brief report on this. Come on up.
Good morning, Mr. President. Theodore Irving, planning staff. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon.
As indicated, this is a zone change for a project that requires the demolition of 11 single-family dwelling units and the construction of 65 condominiums and 164 parking spaces. The project is located on 180,000 square foot site. The project is also submitted with a vesting tentative tract map. The tract map was approved, and there were no appeals on the tract map. The commission heard the case on March 28th and considered the remaining entitlements, which include the zone change. It also included a building line removal. It included an adjustment to allow a reduction in the required space between buildings from 6 feet to 8 feet. And it also included a request to have a 6-foot high fence when the requirement is typically a 3.5-foot high fence. And it also included a site plan review. The Planning Commission approved most of the entitlements with the exception of the requirement to allow a 6-foot high fence. They denied that request. In approving the project and denying that request, they also added some additional conditions along with this. And one of the things they added was that the dwelling units be faced to Burnett Avenue and facing Satacoy Street as well. They also asked that a landscaping plan be provided, and they asked that a private track pickup provider be provided with the project. They asked containers be prohibited in and along driveways, and they asked that a pedestrian circulation system be installed. This is a project site that was internal, and there's usually just a driveway system in this project. There wasn't any indication in the site plan that there was a pedestrian circulation system. So the commission asked that a pedestrian circulation system be put in to minimize the conflict between the vehicles and the pedestrians within the project site. Also, what they decided to do at that time is to designate Satacoy Street as the project frontage. It's a corner lot. The narrower of the two streets is Burnett Avenue, and by code, Burnett Avenue would be the frontage, and in this case, they decided to designate Satacoy Street as the frontage. If you may be familiar with this site was approved a while back for an 82-unit project. At that time, the project consisted of 2 lots that was bisected by 45 feet by 280-foot strip of land. At that time, the zone change was approved, and the conditions related to that zone change had the Q conditions relate to 2 phases, 82 units. The applicant subsequently got control of that 45 feet by 280-foot strip of land that bisected the 2 parcels. And what they did, they came in with the entire project site for this 65-unit project. What we did is we asked that they then apply for a zone change to cover the entire parcel. The previous zone change would have referred to 2 phases and 82 units. It would have been impossible for them at that time to get clearance because, again, this proposed project is 1 phase. So they would not have been able to get an approval of that. So if it looks familiar, that's what it is. And so the commission approved the project with the 1 phase, 65 units, reducing it from 82 units, reducing it from 205 parking spaces to 64 parking spaces. I was just made aware that the applicant has consulted with the council office and asked that a couple of conditions be deleted that were imposed by the commission, and asked that one of the conditions be clarified in the proposed Q conditions. And he submitted a letter dated to date. I'm not certain if you have a copy of that. It's dated September 9th. And he's asking that item 4, he's asking that item 4, which is, makes reference to the dwelling units along Satacoy Street facing it along Satacoy and Burnett. he wants to change that language to give the appearance of facing along Satakoy and Burnett. His rationale is that if you have the project facing along Burnett, you will then be requiring the the driveways and the garages be facing, and that's not the intent of the commission. The intent is to have the buildings. Oh, I have a copy of it here. Okay. So the intent is to have the appearance of facing, even though the driveway entrances may be off of Burnett and into a subterranean parking structure. He's asking that item 10 have the minimum front yard setback reduced from 15 feet to be 13 and a half feet. And he's also asking that item, which is Q condition number 10C, that he asking that be removed, and Q condition 18B.
Are you familiar with these conditions?
We're familiar with these conditions. These conditions were expressly put in by the commission, particularly the condition that relates to the pedestrian circulation system. And so,
but item 10C of page Q2 and item 18B of page Q3, they're being asked to be removed. Are you familiar with those?
Very familiar with them.
And those entail what?
Okay, so let's look at item
10C.
10C. And that's a walkway and driveways are not permitted to cross and encroach into the buffers. That's a condition put in by the commission.
So removing them does not compromise public safety. It does not have a negative impact on the design as it's been.
Well, it will not compromise the public safety in terms of the public outside of the project. There is a concern that there will be conflict between the pedestrians inside the project site and the vehicles that are inside the project site. So the commission was very clear that this is what they wanted to do, to minimize any pedestrian and vehicle conflict within the project site. So this is why they imposed that particular condition.
Okay. And what's the justification of removal? Do you have an answer to that?
The applicant was not clear. They said they spoke with the council office and the community and all agreed that it was not necessary.
I'd just like to know why we're removing it. It's something very basic.
I'm not asking that it be removed.
I know you're not, but this is the request in the letter.
Yeah, this is the request of the applicant. He did not specifically state why he's.
Is the applicant here?
Yes, he'll be here. He's here.
And the council office is here too. Can you just clarify this? Can you have them come to the microphone? Come on up, please. You're the applicant?
Yes, good afternoon, Sean Evenheim, California Home Builders.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Sorry. The reason was, as mentioned, this project was approved originally for 82 units and without the center strip of land that was eventually assembled into the project, which will allow 90 units, and we reduced it to 65. If that condition, we develop a lot of those detached projects. We never had one project that had to do those sidewalks inside. It's an on-site driveway that's really used by the homeowners to exit the project and enter the project. This condition was put on, and if we had to do this condition, then we cannot build 65 units, and we'll have to go back to the 82 units, which was a bad project, higher project, more dense, attached units. And the community agreed that what we propose, and I believe you got some rendering, is much better for the community. And that's why the community agreed there is no need for that.
Okay. And as far as item 18B on Q3?
It's the same exact condition. This one is, I'm sorry, it's the same exact condition. One talk about the landscaping plans and one is on the site plan.
I just needed to know the impact of this request. Okay, thank you. All right. Any questions, Councilman? And we also have a speaker card from Daniel Skolnick, the planning deputy for the office. Please come to the microphone.
I prefer to allow the applicant to speak first.
I'm sorry?
I prefer to allow the applicant. No? Okay.
No, there's only two speaker cards, and we have Sean Evenheim and yourself. Like to speak first? Come on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I just want to go through some of these conditions that were mentioned. The reasoning for the wrought iron fence is Sadico on that side of the streets. All the projects have fence. It needed for security in this area. We're putting a wrought iron and not a block wall, and with landscaping, so it's going to enhance the project. And again, there were renderings that were submitted that you can look at. In regard to item number 4, on page Q1, the reason is DOT will not allow us to enter that many cuts on Sadikoi, so we wanted just to change the wording so it's very clear, so no one asks us to put driveways on Sadikoi. Regarding item number 10 on page Q2, this is, as mentioned before, this is not the front yard. This is the side yard on Burnett. It required to have 10 feet. They require, it's a typo, I believe, 15 feet of landscaping. We're providing 13.5, which is more than 10, but it should be corrected to 13.5 and not 15. And regarding the other two conditions, we talked about the walkways. There is one more condition, 15B, which said that the common area will be set central in the project. This should be corrected, that it should be per Exhibit A as the project was approved, that it show exactly where the common area is. And then the other thing that we like to put there, because this project went through so many hearings and so many meetings, is that the project will be developed as far as the location of the houses, the common areas, the setbacks, the yards, as per the Exhibit A, which that's how it was approved.
But how many community meetings have you had?
A lot, probably.
Ballpark figure.
Probably 12. Community, council office, public hearings.
So a lot of interaction.
Yeah, but we end up with a great project that reduced the density by a third.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your cooperation. Okay, Mrs. Skolnick, you can close it now.
Daniel Skolnick, Planning Deputy for Councilman Tony Cardenas of the 6th District. We concur with what was just said and the recommended conditions. And we would like to emphasize that the applicant did work with the council office, the Certified Neighborhood Council, and stakeholders in the community to give us the project which we're asking for. Thank you.
Okay. So move approval with modified conditions as submitted by the council office's letter. That'll be the action of this committee. Okay, Roberto, next item.
Next item, council members, is item 14. It's in CD5. This is an appeal by the concerned neighbors of Berkeley School. They're appealing various land use entitlements that were granted by the CPC as it relates to a project which will consist of the demolition of 10 existing buildings and the construction of 5 new buildings. And again, this is in CD5.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Councilman. My name is Frank Kwan. I'm the hearing officer of the case. The case before you is an appeal of a Planning Commission action involving a conditional use, some modifications, a specific plan exception, and a site plan review determination. The project basically involves the expansion of the Berkeley School, which is a private school in the Santa Monica Mountains. The net gain in floor area in this case will be approximately 69,500 square feet, and the overall project, once built, will be 168,000 square feet approximately.
Would you mind just elevating the volume of your voice a little bit more and right into the microphone? It will hear you even better.
My apologies. Is that a little bit better?
That's better.
Sorry. Basically, the project will involve an expansion of facilities and an expansion of the enrollment of 80 students from 750 existing to 830. There'll be some also expansion of hours and frequency of events and staffing as well. What I'd like to do is to go back in time a little bit and provide a little bit of CEQA background, since there is another case involving a parcel map for the property. Back in April of this year, on the 24th, the advisory agency certified the EIR and findings along with the mitigation and reporting and monitoring program in connection with the parcel map request. The parcel map was appealed to the CPC on May 22nd with the subject city planning case. The City Planning Commission upheld that parcel map action of the advisory agency and granted the CPC requests. relying on the advisory agency's certified EIR and the additional findings that the CPC made for this particular case that's up for appeal today. The City Council then took jurisdiction on that parcel map case, and they Section 245 the case to City Council for a clarification and review of conditions. And then on June 17, the Council made an action upholding the parcel map case and incorporating some changes to those conditions, also certifying the same EIR. Which takes us to present day on June 22nd, where the appellant, in this case, Concerned Neighbors of Berkeley, they're known as CNOB, appealed the city plan case and its relative entitlements. And for your consideration today is the appeal. I just wanted to make note that the Planning Commission approved a case not only with benefits for the project but benefits for the community as well, involving public improvements, one which involves the removal of queuing of cars that will be dropping off children from the public street. They'll also, with the conditions of approval, the result would also take additional trips off of the area because the TDM program will be implemented, reducing the overall trips to the campus. The applicant also did volunteer a few conditions which involved a conservation easement of 12 acres on an adjacent site that will be provided to the Conservancy, as well as a neighborhood protection fund. I'd like to say that the Commission made a very comprehensive and thoughtful fair determination in this case for all the entitlements concerned. The Commission actually considered information and a staff report from a very lengthy staff report, EIR, extensive public hearings, both before them and myself as a hearing officer. What I'd like to do is also, for housekeeping purposes, there are about 3 corrections to the existing determination letter on page C1, condition number A1C. There should be the reference to commercial film shoots should be deleted since the Commission prohibited any commercial filming. On page F4, the last paragraph, there should be a deletion of one of the sentences beginning with "no student parking is permitted unless sanctioned by the proposed," on and on. So that should be deleted. And then on page C8, condition number A22H2, I'd like to add to that condition, which involves simultaneous events, that there should be only a large-scale event of 400 spectators to occur once a day, and then I think we can try to work out some simplified language to that. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and address some of the concerns or some of the appellant's concerns. The first has to do with not being able to meet the finding for conditional use on the fact that the use will be desirable to the public convenience and welfare, and generally because they believe that the project will be detrimental to the neighborhood because of its temporary nature, and there will be extensive construction. Again, construction in this situation is a temporary type of time period, which only lasts in this case, because of the extensive period, would be 5.5 years, but still temporary in nature. Staff believes that the Commission made appropriate findings in this case, and those are listed on page F3 of the determination letter. And in reference to the construction, I believe the issue is there will be continued particulate emissions in the area as a result of the construction. And those have been really addressed by the environmental impact report as well as the statement of overriding considerations. in that the commission accepts the benefits of the project which outweigh the environmental impacts in this case to be minor. Issue number 2, the applicant, or the appellant rather, identifies that there are height modifications to the building and to the 10-foot fence heights that are adjacent to each of the gates for both entrances at Camino de la Cumbre as well as the entrance to the main campus on Stansbury. Generally, I think these heights are addressed in the findings. The fact that the topography in this canyon rises towards the south up to Mulholland Drive, and the canyon walls actually exceed at least 50 to 75 feet as you rise up into, towards the top of the hill. And the fact that the building is within the bottom or the fall line of the canyon, and the building actually is set back 100 or more feet from the side property lines. So with the topography being sort of in a lower portion of the canyon and the setbacks that are fairly immense, along with the combination of landscaping material and the fence heights, which I must emphasize that I think the applicant, or the appellant rather, misconstrued the finding, is that there's more of a translucent quality to making the campus blend in with the or making the building on campus blend in with the surrounding neighborhood. So I believe the finding there can be made as to the conditional use finding. The second item that the applicant, the third item that the applicant notes, is that the specific plan findings cannot be made for certain items, and that would include the specific plan exception for the heights as well as the use of land. Now, the use of land, as you know, in this case, the school is outside of the institutional corridor and it's beyond the permitted area or targeted for institutions. So it's really a use that would be non-conforming with the specific plan. I think the applicant here argues that it's something that should be addressed by a variance. Well, Section 1236 of the Code clarifies this point and actually requires a specific plan exception filing for such a case. So the type of entitlement is entirely appropriate. Further, I would have to allude to the applicant's submittal of additional findings to supplement the findings in the staff report and, in the determination letter to also justify the specific plan exceptions. And I'm sorry, I want to be quick here and try to move it on.
We don't seem impatient, do we? How many more do we have to go?
Oh, I think this might be the last item here.
Okay.
But just to touch base on a few of the high points. Oops. And let's see. And then the applicant also, or the appellant also touches on expansion of enrollment. I believe those points can be made in the findings as well. So really, and then the final point that the appellant cites is that there are operational differences in the scope of the EIR as compared to what was approved by the Planning Commission. In general, the Planning Commission does take discretion and is able to take discretion as given to them by the city charter. The discretion they took is well within 10% of what the standard environmental policy is of the city to vary any which way the scope of the work or or in this case, it's the hours of operation or frequency of events. Now, the commission did something creative here. I think they, the bottom line is that we came up with about 135 events annually for the campus as compared to the 125 that was talked about in the EIR. Now, the commission was very creative in that they pulled back some of the intensity of several of these events in that they reduced or limited the number of participants that could be on campus at certain times of the day when these events would occur. So with that, I really feel that the commission did its job, made the findings on this particular case, and I feel that their action was very appropriate. The applicant has offered some modifications to ensure some of the consistency with the parcel map conditions, and they also volunteered that staff, these volunteered conditions is something that staff had looked at and I found to be acceptable. The applicant also has made some clarifications to the same condition number A22 that I noted to earlier in the presentation, and I would agree that I think we're headed in the same direction and we can compromise on some sort of language. To conclude, I'd like to recommend to the committee that the appeal, be denied, and that the conditions of approval be modified to staff's recommendation and the changes that were mentioned, as well as the changes suggested by the applicant. And I would suggest that the mitigation monitoring and reporting program be modified to reflect these changes as well, and that the Plum Committee can be sure to direct staff to make those changes and corrections. And I believe that there are no new circumstances in this situation that would warrant additional environmental review under CEQA Section 15162, along with the above findings. Therefore, the current EIR, along with the above findings, constitutes the findings of the City Council in upholding the City Planning Commission's conditional use, modifications, specific plan exceptions, and site plan review determination.
Okay, Mr. Kwan, you made it. Thank you. All right. We do have quite a few speaker cards. Councilman, would you like to share any thoughts or a few words before we start? Okay. I'd like to ask the appellant, Meredith Lobo Angel, to come to the microphone, please. I'm sorry? Well, the appellants, we need to hear from you first.
Your contentions are the contentions and issues, so if you go last.
I don't know if I have to push this down. Is that correct? I'm Meredith Lobel Angel from Angel Law Council for Concerned Neighbors of Berkeley School. And, frankly, I think you're probably aware that we have filed a CEQA suit, and we're working with the city attorney. We've got a stipulation in place to try to sit down and hash out a settlement. But, some of the reasons why we're really here is that my clients are at odds over certain of the conditions. And unfortunately, we're placed in a situation where my clients did not feel that certain of their needs were heard. Nobody ever gets the full wish list on conditions. Nobody, whether it's applicant or whether it's my client. I don't actually see that, we're so much at odds, but what we're looking forward to is working with opposing counsel for real parties and trying to work out some of these additional conditions.
Okay.
Okay, that's where we stand.
Okay, so that would be your...
Pardon me?
That is your presentation to this committee?
That's my position. My clients want to speak, they can speak more to some of the details, and then I can do a final short wrap-up.
No, but I'm asking you, the appellant, to give us your full presentation now.
Well, I'm not the one who's fully presenting.
Who else wants to speak then?
Well, that's what we'll look at. Who would like to speak? Vivian Gumbiner is next.
Please come on up. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Vivian Gumbiner, and I'm here on behalf of the Concerned Neighbors of Berkeley, a committee of the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association. I'm representing hundreds of residents of Sherman Oaks as well as voters. So although we may not be here sporting green stickers, there are numbers of us, you have our petitions, our neighbors are at work. We are not against the expansion of the school, but we believe that the plan must be modified to fit in better with the surrounding neighborhood. The school is located at the end of a cul-de-sac in an entirely residential neighborhood. We urge you to carefully evaluate the plan in front of you, as it will affect our lives for the next 25 years. Parents who attend the school, they will be gone, the kids will be gone, the administrators, as we know, have been turning over quite a bit, but we will be living with your decision for years to come. The CUP calls for incredibly long operating hours. In fact, the daily hours are longer than those of a shopping mall, and the school will be open for business almost every day of the year, similar to a shopping mall. Jane Usher, chair of the City Planning Commission, chastised the school at the CPC hearing in May, declaring that she had never seen a request for such excessive hours for a school. Just because the school is asking for the hours does not mean you have to approve them. The Berkeley School states that it is the largest employer in Sherman Oaks. Remember, this business is operating in an entirely residential neighborhood. So measures must be taken to preserve the quality of life of the residents. The school is asking to establish a summer enrichment program in addition to its current summer school program. So the residents don't even get a break during the summer from the resulting traffic and noise. We have asked the school to install underground traffic loops, which are a proven and relatively inexpensive means of measuring traffic on the campus. It has worked at other campuses, yet the school has turned us down. The school has a history of CUP violations, including 2 violations in the last week, and this is a pretty sensitive time for them to violate the CUP. Yet, they will not install a simple system that will help resolve a 40-year-old traffic problem. Lastly, the CUP is full of inconsistencies and should not be approved in its current form. Remember, we have to live with it. Item 22B says that extracurricular activities on Sundays shall be limited to indoors during the academic year and makes no mention of Sundays during the summer. Item 22E dictates no outdoor practices on Sundays. Can you tell me which one is correct? You're voting on this. I'm not asking a rhetorical question. I don't know the answer to that.
Please, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'd be happy to tell you the neighbor's position on this one, but I think it'd be pretty difficult for you to vote on this without knowing for the record how this is going to play out. It's important to us.
Can you ask the question again?
Sure. Item 22B states that extracurricular activities on Sundays shall be limited to indoors during the academic year, period. Makes no mention of Sundays during the summer, implying that it might be okay during the rest of the year. Then item 22E dictates no outdoor active practice on Sundays. So there's wiggle room, and we've lived with this type of wiggle room for 40 years. So it may sound like minutia to you, but we don't want to have to do that.
I want to make sure we're addressing your concerns,
Yes.
so I'll ask Mr. Kwan to answer it once you're done.
Okay, perfect. So realistically, how can this document be enforced? This is only a sample of the inconsistencies. Members of Plum, it is obvious that this document is less than perfect, and this current state leaves entirely too much room for interpretation. Please allow the time for this document to be fine-tuned before making a decision. Remember, you will have moved on to other political offices, the administrators will have moved on to other schools, the students will have graduated, but we will not have moved out of our houses, and we will have to live with your decision for years to come.
Thank you much. Mr. Kwan, did you catch that question? Hate to put you on the spot like this.
I apologize. I didn't hear the entire, the other comments, but as for the extracurricular activities on Sundays, shall be limited to indoors during the academic year. So really the academic year, I think, is about 220 days out of the year. And school's out for the rest of the year.
Right.
I believe there is a summer program, but that this condition will not apply to the summer program, and that would be under a different...
It will not apply to the summer program, is that what you're saying?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
And maybe
Well, let's firm that up, let's get an answer.
yeah, that could be clarified with the school.
Please, and before it gets to council, let's make sure we give the appellants the courtesy of an answer to that question. Okay? Thank you, Mr. Kwan. All right. Okay, I want to make sure I have covered everyone who is involved with the appeal, so Ms. Meredith Global Angel, is there anyone else?
That's what I was going to say, Mr. Chair, which is that you've got a big stack of, one moment, please, you've got a big stack of cards. I don't think there are that many cards that are in opposition to the school.
Right.
Perhaps you should call all of those, and then let's see how we do with the other stack.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask the attorney who stepped forward at the beginning. Is there anyone else, ma'am? Please come on up, give us your name and address.
My name is Barbara Case.
Please speak in the microphone.
Sorry,
there you go.
My name is Barbara Case. For the last 16 years, I've been a neighbor of Buckley. We've also owned land there for 28 years. And I have a teacher's credential. I am not against education, but I have many concerns about the Buckley expansion. The school has asked for an exception to the Mulholland Corridor regulations to construct a building that exceeds current height regulations. The regulations say that hardship must be shown for such an extension, and yet they have not shown a hardship. In fact, when I built my home, we had to comply with the very height regulations that the school wants to modify. And I turned in a picture here that shows the school as it is. They're one-story, low-slung buildings that were not intrusive, and we are now going from one-story buildings to over 3 stories high, higher than practically all of the buildings on Ventura Boulevard. So I don't understand that. The Mulholland Scenic Corridor Plan states that the school must maintain a scenic separation between the school and the surrounding neighborhood. However, when the neighbors were asked to replace the rusty chain link fence with a wrought iron fence and therefore comply with the current Mulholland rules, they came up with a grandfather clause saying that they could use chain link. But because there's a lot split, this grandfather clause actually isn't legal. And don't you think that the school would want to have a better exterior to the neighborhood anyway? I've given them plans and photographs of all of the other, there's no chain link fence in the neighborhood anyway. The city planners recommend that the Buckley install curbs and gutters adjacent to its Camino de la Cumbre border. This is in line with what has been required of any new buildings along Camino de la Cumbre for 16 years. When we built our home, we had to spend $30,000, which will probably be more for one little family, and believe me, it was a huge hardship for us. Almost lost the house, got 3 jobs to pay for it. But they're completely not having to do any of the curbs and gutters. And I was told that the city was actually stunned that this requirement was removed. Instead, the city is going to pay to asphalt it, maybe. No curbs and gutters, just berms. And I've turned in photographs before to show that the street does not drain properly. And also in terms of, I want to keep the trees as much as anyone, but if you look above where the school is, all the way up to Mulholland Drive, you'll see that the whole neighborhood above it has curbs and gutters, and it's fine. Anyway, there is a nexus in the neighborhood for curbs and gutters. And I believe on Jack Weiss's website it says that he promised to keep the streets repaired and done correctly. Anyway, but for some reason at our time when our city is woefully short of funds, Plum and the city councils have been let off the hook. Not only does Buckley but anyway, the street has already been failed once and closed, and we're leaving ourselves open to future accidents. This is a $70 million project, so please tell me why Buckley doesn't have to have the street improvements. Okay, so those are some of my concerns, and I have a picture of our street, which cost $30,000 to put the curbs and gutters in front of our house. I've asked if the city will, anyway, and I also have the back gate with the chain link fence. So thank you very much, and I hope you'll really consider the neighborhood issues. We also gathered petitions of over 600,000, so it's not just a few neighbors, it's people in the neighborhood who worked hard to live there and want to, and are environmentalists and want to keep the neighborhood nice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does that conclude all the appellants that wanted to speak, Ms. Angel?
My understanding, those are the residents that wish to speak. Can I retain like 3 minutes for rebuttal or final statement? Okay, that's not how it works in your city?
Yes.
Okay, other places do. Okay, I don't know whether you would like to have the list of the points that we're talking to the city attorney about and also opposing counsel. We have a settlement conference that's scheduled for September 22nd. It's obviously our goal to address some of the points that can be addressed as part of the conditions. As you know, these things get to this point where you appeal when there's disagreement over sometimes things that may be seemingly major or seemingly minor. But there should be a middle point, I think.
Okay.
Do you want to have a copy of this?
Yes.
Okay. Who do I submit it to?
To the clerk, please.
Okay.
Barbara.
Thank you. And I think the residents already told you what their major concerns are.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that concludes?
That concludes it. We'd like you actually to not act today and wait until the settlement conference to see if we can get this ironed out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then we'll proceed with the rest of the speakers, and the rest of the speakers will have a 2-minute limit. So when you come to the microphone and give us your name and address, keep an eye on the clock. And again, it doesn't hurt to say, I agree with the previous speaker. I'd like to call up Glenda Crump and Dr. Arnold Newman. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I am Glenda Crump, 4020 Camino de la Cumbre, Sherman Oaks, California, 91423. I am here as a resident of Camino de la Cumbre. My husband and I have lived there for 36 years. We oppose the appellant's position and ask that you deny their appeal. You are aware of how long this has been under consideration and the extensive hearings, so we don't need to go into details. After all of these hearings and the plan was approved, we have, excuse me, I'm going to back up a little bit. I do want to say that the statement made by one of the appellants that the residents, that there are hundreds of residents that disagree with the plan. I have to say that we canvassed 310 houses in our little community canyon, and none of the residents disagree now with this plan. So there are two sides there. Anyway, we live on Camino de la Cumbre. It's a rural neighborhood. The appellants would like to convert it into something urban, destroy the wildlife corridor, trees, and you've heard all of this. It's in your record. We believe that the compromise and the plan that was approved, which would restore the asphalt berms, will be satisfactory. And as I repeat, we are satisfied with your decision. It was all of the I'm
yes.
done? Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
We'd like you to deny the appeal.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Arnold Newman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon.
And I'd like to take a particular exception to one of the remarks that was made by one of the appellates that work on Camino de la Cumbre should go on. This position that there is a compromise between BOE that found that most of the work that was projected for improvement on Camino de la Cumbre as far as curbs and gutter would have resulted in the demise of 49, exactly 49, this is a tree arborist report, 49 mature trees, most of them oaks and black walnut, protected trees that were saplings when Columbus discovered America. And the compromise that BOE made in this case, and quite a just one, is supported by virtually all of the 310 people who reside in this Oak Forest Canyon, part of the Oak Forest Canyon Association. And it's supported by the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, the Federation of Hillside and Canyon Associations, the Ecological Quality Association of Southern California, the International Society for Preservation of Tropical Rainforest, and the Sierra Club. And this compromise, which will limit the work to the essential part of Camino de la Cumbre, 55 feet of it, the rest being cosmetic, in the words of BOE, is affirmed and applauded by all who live in that canyon, except for the two petitioners you heard from today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And under 2 minutes, great. Laura Doherty and Cindy Sterrett. Okay. 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 Mr. Doherty, you stay here at the Berkeley School?
Yes, I'm head of school at Buckley School.
The head school?
Yes, and we have if you have council permitting, we would like to make a short presentation, perhaps a little bit longer than 2 minutes, but I'll go as quickly as possible.
Now, let me
just be really quick and...
Let me ask you this. Sure. If we go over the 2 minutes, I have a stack of many folks who I'm assuming are supporting your position.
I'm assuming they would come up and say, we support the position and not talk any longer than that, so...
You're beating me to the punch.
Okay.
Okay. So let's give you a little bit more time with the understanding that most of the folks who have green buttons will be able to stand and say, I support what Mr. Doherty has stated. Please go ahead.
We're very pleased to be here today, and thank you very much for hearing us. And we're very appreciative of the support we've received from the City Planning Commission and the staff there, especially the tremendous amount of work that Frank Kwan has done. I'd like to give you a brief overview of our project and the amount of time it took us to get where we are. We started looking at reviewing our campus 11 years ago, and we went through a number of iterations before we came to the plan we have today. In fact, we looked at what we were doing, and in 2004 or 5, we completely revamped our plan in light of neighborhood concerns. We've had 3 priorities from the outset in this plan. Number 1, we want to be good neighbors. Number 2, we need to strengthen our educational program to meet the priorities for the future. And number 3, we wanted to protect our environment in the canyon setting. Here's a partial list of all the meetings that we've had on Board 2. You can see that we've had extensive input from the entire community. And this list does not include all the meetings that we've had with CNOBs and members of the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association. While at times we wish this process would have gone faster, we believe that we've come up with a stronger product as a result of the work that we have done with our community. We're very proud that we have received unanimous support from the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council, support from the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, and countless neighbors. We need to upgrade our facilities to meet 21st century standards. Since our last construction over 30 years ago, education has changed dramatically. Title IX, which requires sports for women, technology, media, the list goes on. We also need to grow with the population. LA has grown substantially. We have remained at the same population that we've had since the granting of our CUP. Originally, we talked with our neighbors about 225 students addition. Because of the concerns of the neighbor, we reduced that to 80. We think this is a valuable number that will make a difference for our programs academically and athletic. In the past several years, several schools in the Mulholland Corridor have been granted additional students in construction processes. These include Curtis, the Muirman School, the Weiss School twice, and the Louisville High School. We're simply asking to do what these schools have already been granted to do, to build on our campus and to add students. We are deeply committed to our environment for two reasons. One, we think it's the right thing to do, and two, we need to model for students. We're an educational institution, and what we do for the environment carries across to our students as well. That commitment is in response to Jack Weiss's request. We are committing 12.6 acres to the Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy in order to preserve that open land, which is valuable to our neighbors and to all of Sherman Oaks. We have because of our efforts to reach out, we have a lot of support in the community, including friends and neighbors, those who live near the school, some of whom have children, many of whom do not. These include 463 Sherman Oaks residents, and if you get everyone who signed our petitions, we have 1,600 supporters. And I'd like all of those with green buttons who are here today to stand up so you can see the extent of our symbolic support here today.
Okay.
I think we've succeeded in all three of our objectives through this work. We've worked with our neighbors, we've got a plan that's going to improve our educational program, and we've got a plan that supports the environment of Sherman Oaks as well as our school through our gift to the Sherman Oaks community. And thank you for your continued support, and I urge you to support us with the continuation of this project.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Any questions or comments? No? Okay, Ms. Sterrett.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Cindy Sterrett from Latham & Watkins. I've been working on this project for 5 years. In fact, I think Barbara and Jeff Case may have been in the first meeting I was in 5 years ago at the Berkeley School. And the project you see before you is the result of many, many compromises and modifications led by Councilmember Weiss. But Berkeley deserves huge credit because they became a very strong member of their community, developed many relationships in the course of modifying this plan, including the fact that in 2005, the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council Land Use Committee asked them to completely redesign the plan. That's the plan you see before you today. An earlier group before the Concerned Neighbors of Berkeley organized presented over 50 conditions to the school that they asked them to voluntarily accept. Most of those are in the Planning Commission decision before you. Wherever the city, the council office, the neighborhood council, wherever they felt that Berkeley was not bending over backward to accommodate the neighbors, that was pointed out and those changes were made, remembering that the ultimate goal here is to enhance the future of education and to protect the kids. So I'd just like to quickly show you the plan and just explain why these modifications are being sought. The plan that you see before you achieves the three key goals that we were asked to achieve by the neighbors. First, get the queuing off Stansbury. Stansbury is the major street at the north end of the campus that enters Berkeley. The gate at Stansbury under the current conditions has to be locked at 6 o'clock, which means that under the current conditions, they have to exit off of Camino de la Cumbre, and you know the parcel map that you all heard a few months ago had to do with improvements to Camino de la Cumbre. Berkeley is reducing its use of Camino de la Cumbre, but the city and the Bureau of Engineering and your committee asked them to do about $500,000 worth of improvements to that street. The neighbors you heard from at the beginning of this hearing have filed a lawsuit against the city, asking the courts to invalidate that approval. The stipulation that they filed says that won't go to court until after the city acts on this case, so that a lawsuit can also be filed on this case at the same time. We appreciate that they want to continue settlement discussions, but there won't be anything to settle unless there is an approval by the city of a project. The Camino de la Cumbre gate will be used only very little with the revised plan. Another goal was that no new disturbed area would be created, that all the buildings would be built essentially on existing pads, and that's what creates the constraints in the construction schedule, because the school has to continue to operate. We had earlier plans that we talked about with our neighbors where we would build a new building in an area that's currently green that would have expedited construction, but it would have meant more disturbance of the area. So that's why you see the construction schedule. And then we were asked to balance the dirt on site, to eliminate, except for a tiny amount, to eliminate any trucking of dirt on and off, and that's what creates the need for that height modification. The height will be the same height as the Disney Hall currently is. There is no impact. You really cannot see it because all the neighbors look down at it from above. The Planning Commission approved it, and we think that's appropriate. The goal here is to make this project as sustainable as we can. We're replacing what's essentially a concrete campus with one that will be green, will be permeable, will incorporate water conservation, all the goals that we're all trying to achieve, and we'll do that in order to reduce the impact on the neighbors, reduce the impact on the environment, and respect the canyon setting. The construction schedule is one that we've tightened over time. The Planning Commission took a year out of it as well. We're obviously willing to have continued discussion of that and to respond to any comments the committee may have on that issue. And we did submit to you, and my partner David Goldberg is prepared just to explain some additional clarifications and tightening up of conditions to try to reduce the construction impacts and other things even more. So that's what this blue sheet of paper is that we submitted today.
I know this might sound like minutia, but one of the appellants did speak to the condition of these functions over the academic year, and there seemed to be some ambiguity. Could you shed any light on that, and maybe how about Mr. Kwan on answering that?
Sure. I think Mr. Kwan's condition is not ambiguous. There are two different limitations there. One says that, I believe the second one says there can't be any sports activities outdoors on Sundays. No teams can practice outdoors on Sundays, which is something that Mrs. Gumbiner expressly asked the Planning Commission for, and they granted her. The other one talks about extracurricular activities and has limits on extracurricular activities. Athletic practices and extracurricular activities are two different things, but essentially there's just a set of restrictions that make sure that the athletic field, which is down at that end, and the two people you heard from, I think, have the houses that overlook the athletic field, it just constrains activities on that athletic field. And by the way, Berkeley has reduced their activities on that athletic field significantly over time. They've eliminated their football team. So that athletic field is an area that will be improved in terms of sustainability, but is not going to be, the use of it will not be intensified as a result of this project.
Thank you for that.
And we're happy to answer any questions now or later.
Okay. So, Ms. Sterrett and Mr. Doherty, my impression was that since we gave you more time for this presentation, we have a stack of folks that wanted to speak. Does that mean that we're all going to get a big yes?
I believe that the people that want to speak are going to be very brief. And my partner, Mr. Goldberg's card is in there, and he wanted to talk about the specific conditions. Perhaps, should he do that now, or would you rather have him wait until?
So that way you can cover as much information as possible and hopefully give other folks a reason to speak.
I know everyone will control their comments and keep them as short as possible.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. David Goldberg with Latham & Watkins. I had a lengthier comments to make, but with respect to the committee's time, I'll be very brief and just discuss the document that we submitted, the blue sheet. Those are inclusive of clarifications and modifications that the school has volunteered to tighten up some of the construction conditions to provide some greater protections for the community during construction, as well as the environment. They also include some conforming changes to match up the conditions in the CUP with the parcel map, because there were two sets of approvals and not all of the conditions precisely matched up, and so we've volunteered to make all of those conforming with the stricter conditions in the parcel map. And in addition, they include the clarification that Mr. Kwan referenced with respect to simultaneous events. And so that's what's on the blue sheet. As Mr. Kwan noted, he's reviewed and is supportive of those changes, and we've asked that they be incorporated into the CUP.
Okay.
Thank you.
You scared me there for a second. I think we'll go through all 15 pages, but thank you. All right.
I'd be happy to go through them with you if you like.
No, it's quite all right. All right. Understanding this is Councilman Weiss, your district. You have quite a few speakers here, and do you want to keep it?
Mr. Thompson, if you could take the, thank you. Why don't we ask a number of cards have been put in, and everyone has a right to speak on the item, and everyone's card will be made a part of the record, which will go wherever this matter goes, if it does go to a court. So in light of that, is there anyone who has put a card in favor of the school who would like to offer any additional comments at this time? If you have the right to do that. If maybe there are one or two representative folks who want to speak, some neighborhood council or from...
Well, we do have neighborhood council, okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Councilman Weiss. My name is Dave Rand. I'm the chair of the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council Land Use Committee, and I'm on the board of the Neighborhood Council. I'm here today representing the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council, and I'm proud to say that I'm here to strongly support this project. I know there have been a number of city hearings on the Buckley School project, but I want to talk very briefly about the extensive community process that we had. Our support for this project did not come easily. We had not one, not two, not three, not four, not five. We had 6 community meetings where Buckley came out, where neighbors came out, stakeholders came out, and we talked through this project. We talked traffic, we talked construction, we talked noise, we talked neighborhood impacts. On traffic, which was obviously a concern, we were impressed with a strict TDM program that basically said, despite the enrollment increase, there'll be no new trips. On construction, we were impressed with the fact that the school redid their plan to dramatically reduce the number of hauling truck trips that would impact the community. We were concerned about the mountains and the environmental sensitivity. We were very impressed that the school decided to set aside 12.6 acres for permanent open space in the Santa Monica Mountains. Those are all the technical issues, and I just want to close by saying there was something else behind our neighborhood council's unanimous support for this project, and I was trying to put words to it, and I couldn't quite do it until I heard the hearing officer recite some of the reasons why the appellants are opposing this project. And the best way to sum up why the neighborhood council unanimously supported this project is to cite one of the findings that the appellants say this project can't meet. This project does not only meet, but defines the public convenience and the public welfare. This is a school. This is an important asset for our community, and we strongly urge you to support the project today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sprague.
Good afternoon. My name is Laurel Tu. Since 1995, I have lived at 14121 Valley Vista on the corner of Valley Vista and Stansbury Avenue. I state for the record that my children do not attend the Buckley School, and we have no vested interest in the school other than as neighbors. As such, we have found the current staff at Buckley to be caring neighbors who have worked hard to mitigate traffic and address neighbor relations since the previous administration 12 years ago. As a specific example, the recent opening of school 2 weeks ago seemed to go so smoothly traffic-wise that I actually had to consult my calendar to make sure the school was really open. Living as we do at a 4-way stop just 2 blocks east of Beverly Glen, we experience both north-south as well as east-west traffic. We also know that Stansbury Avenue has been designated by the city as a secondary traffic artery. Our observation as neighbors is that the Valley Vista to Beverly Glen east-west commuter connection is far more onerous than families driving up Stansbury to drop their children at school. I have 2 thoughts, briefly. First, in my current role as an independent school administrator, I understand the traffic control responsibilities that befall independent schools. Buckley's traffic and parking restrictions for its families are appropriate and are one of the most restrictive I have come across at any school in the city, and I work with all of them. They are, in fact, far more restrictive than the restrictions in place at the school where I'm currently employed. As an administrator, I appreciate how hard this is for Buckley to impose on their families, but as a neighbor, I am grateful to them. And finally, in my former occupation as Director of Admission at USC, I can personally attest to the high regard in which Buckley is held nationally in the university community for its long history of educating the future leaders of this and other cities. How fortunate for Sherman Oaks that a school of this caliber is in our midst. I urge you to support them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Aaron Green, representing Vike of the Valley Industry and Commerce Association. Just very briefly, not to touch on any of the technical issues on traffic or any of that, we've heard plenty, but I just want to comment as a business organization representing businesses in the San Fernando Valley. VICA has taken this through the committee process, and we've continued to evaluate the conditional use permit, the exception, and the site review that has been that has been allotted to the Buckley School, and we understand and we appreciate that the local benefits and the business benefits to the San Fernando Valley and to Sherman Oaks are exceedingly important. And the school and the boost that it provides to local businesses, we think are really substantial. And so we'd really like to see that this appeal be denied today, because we think that the Buckley School is exceedingly important. Vike has as one of its guiding principles that we further, to the best of our ability, providing a world-class education system for the San Fernando Valley. And we believe that maintaining the conditional use permit, the exceptions, and the site reviews they have been granted by the City Planning Commission is really going to further that. So we request that you deny this appeal as it's been presented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are we... Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Sandra Seymour, and I reside at 4030 Sumac Drive in Sherman Oaks, 91403. I'm a close neighbor of the school, a lifelong resident of Sherman Oaks, and for over 30 years I've been a real estate agent there as well. I do not have an affiliation with the school, but having lived near the school for so many years, I feel a connection to it and know it to be an active and important part of the community. As a real estate agent, I could tell you how important it is to prospective home buyers. Some would like to send their children there, and others feel that having a top-tier local school positively impacts both the character of the neighborhood and the value of the homes there. I know that part of the discussion today is in regards to the school and its relationship to the Mulholland specific plan. I think everyone who lives in or near this corridor is clear about the plan's role to govern residential buildings, not institutional buildings. The fact that a tiny portion of the school's property is within the outer corridor, a portion of the site that is, in fact, not even involved in this development, doesn't seem like a big deal to me, especially since the school predates the specific plan and since this project maintains the spirit of the specific plan's goal to protect views and natural resources. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. So this is part of the big six, right, that we're going to speak?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
My name is Tom Sprague. I live at 14145 Greenleaf in Sherman Oaks. I live at the corner of Sainsbury, Community La Cumbre, and Greenleaf, right where they all come together. I have no children that attend Buckley. I have no affiliation whatsoever other than I'm a neighbor. I live 2 blocks away. I've been coming to these meetings for years, and I think Buckley's done an amazing job. I've heard people talk about traffic. I commute down Stansbury every weekday going to the west side for work. Stansbury is a commuter street. It's not Buckley traffic. It's that simple. One of the things I heard for the first time at the last meeting was the extracurricular activities. I thought that was very bothersome. Going to school, of course, is about reading, writing, and arithmetic, but some of the best times I had at school was the extracurricular activities, and trying to prevent kids from having that, I think, would be terrible. And I hope that we can keep that, because that's some of the best things that these kids get to do, whether it's sports or the band or a club. I think that's some great things. So I hope we can keep the extracurricular activities for them. I didn't even know they had them. It's been completely invisible to me, and I've lived there over a decade. And I don't see any increased traffic. I don't hear any noise. I think that's something we absolutely need to keep, that extracurricular activity. As far as Camino de la Cumbre, I used to own the property at 3636 Camino de la Cumbre. I know the street very well. Putting curb and gutter on that street would absolutely ruin that street. That street has an amazing country feel to it. It's this winding country road. Putting curb and gutter there, if you know the street, it would be terrible. It would completely ruin that street, not to mention take out dozens and dozens of beautiful trees. We can't do that to that street. It's a great street. So I hope we can pass this thing and finally get on with letting this school move on and educate their kids.
Can I get your name one more time?
Tom Sprague.
Tom Sprague, okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay. I'm dying to hear from this person, because I know he lives I believe he lives in my district. Rourke Regan, did you want to come on up? I know he was a part of the package deal, but...
Hi, I'm Rourke Reagan at 3410 Glen Albin Drive, 90065. I am in your district. I live in the district, but I work at the Berkeley School. I'm an art teacher there, and I wanted to give a teacher's perspective on the school and also on this public good that seems to be so important with the CUP. I teach wonderful kids, and one of our goals is to have them do community service. Our kids go out, clean the LA River. We visit elderly people in the hospitals, the soup kitchens downtown. We want them to be part of Los Angeles. This is so important for us to go on. Excuse me. As a teacher with extracurricular activities, you really do see it. I'm an art teacher. Sometimes I need a weekend to go in. I can't because of the CUP. Right now we have to close at 6:30. I'm sorry, when you're doing a play after school, you need hours longer than 6:30. Sometimes you have a game. If our games go on, if we can't be at our school, we have to go to the public park. We see that right now down here at the Rio, that a lot of other schools have to use public parks to play games and take them away from local stakeholders. So I ask you to deny this appeal and allow us your CUP. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay. So that concludes the public hearing, and all the cards that have been submitted will be on the record. So we appreciate your cooperation. And Councilmember Weiss, any words?
I do have a couple, but Mr. Kwan, is there anything that you need to address based on the hearing that we've had so far? Any items that need to be cleaned up or addressed?
I don't think there were any follow-up questions, Councilman, but if any, I'd be glad to address
I just want to
those.
give you that chance. Mr. Chair, most people in this room have heard me give my pro-Buckley speech, except for you.
Okay, so I better sit back.
But you've heard me give plenty of speeches,
Okay.
so I'll spare you that. I'll send you a transcript of one of the earlier ones. You can read that. No, today's not a day to give a speech. I want to get the school approved. So let me just go through a couple of items, Mr. Chair, that I think are useful for the record. First is, I want to, and I do incorporate everything I've said earlier, particularly my testimony at the Planning Commission hearing at Van Nuys City Hall a few months back. Buckley worked with the community here for a very long time. There was a lot of back and forth, and I particularly want to thank Beverly Kenworthy from my office, who would be here today if she were not 8.95 months pregnant as of this moment. As you heard, Buckley received support from the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council. I also think it's very impressive that Vike is here today. Vike hasn't weighed in on these sort of issues in the past. Are the Vike folks still here? I'm thanking you. Oh, well. Thanks for coming. It's a smart thing. It's good for the San Fernando Valley. I hate when these issues get portrayed in the press in the wrong way. This is a great day for the Valley to have a school like Buckley continue to thrive and expand and modernize in this century. Now, Buckley has been very reasonable in their request to upgrade their facilities and their program, and the school has entirely redesigned the project multiple times over the past several years to relocate the development in central areas of the campus away from residential properties to the west. Okay, a couple public benefits that I want to note. There will be no haul route through the neighborhood. Buckley will use balance cut and fill. Transit demand management, something we have worked on for quite some time as Kenworthy especially. There will be a peak hour reduction in traffic, no impact from additional students, and a commitment to reduce trips by 5%. The conservation easement, I asked Buckley some time ago, and they agreed to dedicate 12.6 acres on Coy Drive. This is Santa Monica Mountains, pristine land that will always remain pristine, that will benefit the school, the neighborhood, and people who just happen to be passing through. There is a $50,000 neighborhood protection fund that Buckley is endowing, and there will be a much more successful and extensive pickup and drop-off program that really begins, Mr. Chair, from the fact that the entirety of the project is really conceptualized to take the queuing off of Stansbury onto an on-campus, largely subterranean parking facility. I didn't hear points made in the appeal today about the traffic study, but let it just be noted that Buckley voluntarily implemented a TDM program early, and I believe DOT has addressed those issues. Height, we heard a little bit about height. Given the location of the neighboring homes, most of them are on hills looking down on Buckley, and in any event, the school will not appear to be quite tall from those higher vantage points. It'll be set back, landscaped, blended in. Let me ask Buckley, Mr. Goldberg or Ms. Starrett, to come forward, please. One issue that has been raised in the past, and I gather from hearing council come forward, council says she wants to deal. One issue that I imagine comes up in the future concerns Saturday construction hours. Now, I've always said to the community, not with a great degree of success, evidently, that I understand if you don't want work done on Saturdays, you want to have more quiet Saturdays, you're just going to make the project longer. That's all. So I would take my medicine. Personally, if I lived there, I would just take my medicine and get it done with. Having said that, is Buckley prepared to voluntarily provide any other details regarding Saturday construction?
Okay. Thank you, Councilman. This issue has been around for a while. We've been working through it and have had several discussions with the community. And remember your comments at CPC where you made those very remarks about there being a trade-off between foregoing Saturday construction and the overall construction schedule. We've previously made some offers to the community to forego Saturday construction entirely during the second and third phases of the project if we could have 6 months of the construction schedule that the Planning Commission had shortened restored. So not the entire year that the Planning Commission took off the schedule, but 6 months. Since that time, we've looked even harder at our construction schedule, worked with the project manager and the contractors to see if there were ways we could shave even more Saturdays off the schedule, and looked into phase one, the most intensive phase of construction. And during that phase, with no additional link to the construction schedule, we have a proposal here today that would further reduce Saturday constructions during essentially the fall and winter period by half during that phase. So to sum up, there would be no Saturday construction during the second and third phases of the project. And during the fall and winter of the first phase of the project, we would cut Saturday construction by half.
Is that a volunteered condition, or is that something that I and the chair should insert into the conditions of approval today?
We would volunteer to make that a condition of approval of the project.
So I should move that into the conditions today, or do you want to, or not?
Yes, we would be fine if you'd want to move that into the conditions, and in anticipation of the issue arriving, we actually have some language that we would enter into the record.
Okay. Sir, is that?
Cindy Starrett from Latham & Watkins. We'd like to submit some proposed language and ask that perhaps you could consider adopting this language implements what Mr. Goldberg just said, together with the findings that were on the blue sheet we gave you earlier.
Okay.
I believe Mr. Kwan suggested earlier that you all might want to direct staff to update the mitigation monitoring program and the findings before this went to council. And so our hope was to perhaps facilitate that with these submittals.
Well, I'll make, Mr. Kwan, I'll make that motion per her suggestion and request the incorporation of the green piece of paper that just came around. Thank you for that. Let me just conclude, because, Mr. Chair, I actually added this up over the weekend. I have, in my 7 years, done nearly 24 schools and institutional projects in my district, and every time I get the same feedback from neighbors. They tell me that I do not know what it's like to live in a neighborhood that is impacted by these sorts of uses, and it's not true. I live down the street from a public school and a private school. I know exactly what it's like to live in a neighborhood that is impacted by institutions. I'm impacted by multiple institutions. It is a benefit to live in that type of neighborhood. It is not a burden. Indeed, I'm going to help one of the schools in my neighborhood expand and impose allegedly more of a burden on myself, but I don't see it that way. Schools matter in this city, and I'm very pleased to be able to support Buckley. I move, Mr. Chair, that we deny the appeal and approve the conditions that Mr. Kwan has presented to us and make the requisite findings.
Thank you. I do have one question in regards to the overall construction timeline. I know that we have targets that we are focused on. What's the targeted time frame for the construction timeline? Do we have a rough idea?
David Goldberg, Latham and Watkins. In response to your question, the construction schedule that was approved by the Planning Commission broke out the construction by phasing, and it imposed at that time a total of 5.5 years on the construction, which was actually less than what the EIR had analyzed. With the adoption of this modification, it would be a 6-year construction time frame overall. Now, construction won't be occurring nonstop during that 6 years.
But it's a phased approach with intermittent stages.
Exactly.
And that's, I just want to make sure that was for the record.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this committee will deny the appeal filed by the concerned neighbors of Berkeley School and thereby sustain from the entire decision of the Planning Commission in approving, subject to conditions of approval, various land use entitlements relative to the demolition of 10 existing buildings and construction of 5 new buildings for a total project of 168,650 square feet for property at 3900 North Stansbury Avenue with all the added conditions that have been identified today. That'll be the action of this committee. Thank you. Just have one more item, folks, so thank you for your cooperation. Let's just...
Yeah, thank goodness. What time? Iris. Oh. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's anybody left for your item.
Tiring committee.
Very few.
Okay, folks, if we can take our conversations outside, we appreciate that very much. We can start with item number 15. Please take your conversations outside. We're back to item number 15.
Yes, Councilman, it's an appeal by Robert Blue and Doug Haynes from La Mirada Avenue Neighborhood Association. They're appealing the actions of the CPC as it relates to a track map for a mixed-use project consisting of 305 condo units in CD 13.
Okay, please give us the report.
Excuse me. Good afternoon, council members. This is the second appeal of vesting tentative tract map number 68501. I was the deputy advisory agency for the tract map, which permitted, as Roberto said, 305 condominium units, 40,000 square feet of creative office space, and I approved it only after the City Planning Commission had approved the incidental general plan amendment zone change case number CPC 2007-515. The tract map was appealed by the same two appellants to the City Planning Commission on July 10, 2008. The City Planning Commission took testimony and then denied the appeals with some modifications to conditions from Bureau of Engineering located on Gordon Street. Both appellants filed subsequent tract appeals to the City Council and appealed the general plan amendment zone change case to Council. On July 25, 2008, the City Council approved the general plan amendment and zone change, and the tract map is conditioned to be consistent with the City Council's action. The current appeals before you today focus on the EIR that was adopted by CRA, the variances that have been approved, and the deviations from the advisory agency's parking policy. There were no CEQA challenges to the EIR when it was adopted by the CRA board. The applicant's attorney submitted a response to these recent appeals. I think it was dated September 8th, and it's should be in the record. Planning concurs with their responses. The appellants state that the project's inconsistent with the plan, but the plan has been amended by the City Council to permit the development. The Deputy Advisory Agency parking policy is a guideline that has been...
You're going to have to speak up a little bit more, a little bit closer to the mic.
The Deputy Advisory... The Deputy Advisory parking policy is a guideline that has been lowered on projects downtown, in Hollywood, and in specific plan areas that permit fewer spaces. The appellant submitted several articles as part of his appeal regarding low ridership and transit-oriented developments. I have submitted articles from LA Times, Metro ridership statistics, and other articles regarding increase in transit ridership since the price of gas has increased, and as well as people becoming more environmentally aware of their gas consumption. Staff recommends that the appeals be denied and the CPC's action be sustained. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have the appellants before us. Understand we have Doug Haynes, as well as another appeal by Mr. Blue. And I'm not sure if he's here or not. No, he's not. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Haynes with the La Mirada Avenue Neighborhood Association. The city's pre-commitment to the proposed project before you today has infected its analysis and led to an abuse of discretion. The City Planning Commission completely ignored the acknowledged environmentally superior by right development scenario, not even discussing the possibility of a reduced project during several hearings in violation of the California Environmental Quality Act. CEQA mandates that significant environmental damage be substantially lessened or avoided where feasible. The Environmental Impact Report for the Sunset Gordon project correctly identified the proposed development before you today as the project with the most significant environmental impacts, whereas the EIR identifies a by right development as the environmentally superior project. Under CEQA, you are required to approve the environmentally superior alternative unless the administrative record clearly demonstrates that it is infeasible to do so, which it does not. In the project's EIR and the advisory agency's CEQA findings, it is repeatedly claimed that a by right development with little or no variances, deviations, or special discretionary approvals would require that the existing old spaghetti factory restaurant building be destroyed, that a by right development would not include the 40,000 square feet of office space that the CRA is paying $6 million to build, that a by right development would not provide so-called workforce housing, that it would not provide the 21,000 square foot so-called urban park that the city is paying over $5 million for, that it would not result in the development of an energy efficient building, and that it would not, quote, encourage the use of alternative modes of transit and limiting large-scale automobile access and infrastructure, unquote. In the EIR and in the advisory agency's CEQA findings, a by right environmentally superior development is identified as having a maximum of 148 residential units. Yet the previous owner of the project site, GTO Sunset LLC, applied to the City Planning Department in 2006 for a largely by right development of 124 residential units that would have in fact preserved the old spaghetti factory building, constructed 39,000 square feet of office space, and provided 23,000 square feet of open space. The workforce housing component of the current project includes absolutely no affordable housing. It is in fact completely subsidized by the Community Redevelopment Agency with millions of dollars in tax money, and could therefore have also been utilized by the previous site owner. The same applies to the issue of an energy-efficient building. As for the claim that increased density with reduced parking encourages the use of alternative modes of transit, there is absolutely no evidence in the record to support that. As stated by the Court of Appeal in Lincoln Place Tenants Association versus the City of Los Angeles, quote, an agency may not approve a project that will have significant environmental impacts if there are feasible alternatives or feasible mitigation measures that would substantially lessen those effects, unquote. As further stated by the Court of Appeal in Preservation Action Council versus the City of San Jose, quote, it is the policy of the state that public agencies should not approve projects as proposed if there are feasible alternatives or feasible mitigation measures available which would substantially lessen the significant environmental effects of such projects, unquote. Under CEQA, you are required to reject the project before you and instead approve an environmentally superior development which is not only feasible but of benefit to this community. To instead ignore the fiduciary responsibility of this city and approve the project before you today would unfortunately be just a further abuse of discretion and will likely be overturned in court. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here on behalf of the appellants? Please come on and give us your name and address.
Good afternoon. My name is Ziggy Cruz, and I'm here today on behalf of Robert Blue, who could not be here. He asked me to read this into the records. The core reason he is opposing this project is the negative impact it will have on the surrounding area because this project is drastically underparked. The area already has a recognized critical parking shortage. Last year, Mr. Bob Blue personally canvassed the neighborhood and solicited feedback from residents, and they unanimously agreed that the existing lack of parking in the neighborhood could not take the additional impact of the Sunset Garden project as currently proposed. Today, we are being offered an artificial choice. This choice is this project or no project at all. And yet, no alternative project has been offered. You can have another choice, which was proposed by the previous owner of this project, the GTO development team. You can have a project that will still provide great jobs, open space, and contribute to the neighborhood and the city of Los Angeles. A project that is 13 stories instead of 23 stories. A project that doesn't use $17 million in taxpayer subsidies. A project that doesn't put such a burden on the public and on the city's aging infrastructure. The current Sunset Garden project has the most discretionary entitlements ever granted to a developer in the history of the city of Los Angeles. This project has 17 separate discretionary requests. As a comparison, the Hollywood Highland Kodak Theater project only had 4 discretionary entitlements. The granting of variances for density for this density is equal to a monetary subsidy because it directly increases the value of the land to the owner at the expense of the taxpayer who is facing the burden of all the impacts in this project. Now, Mr. Blue respectfully urges you to approve the appeals filed in this agenda item. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for taking the time. We do have with us Tom Cody, the applicant, and we have Craig Lawson and Nicole Shalinian. So, would like to come on up?
This is Craig Lawson, for the record. I'm going to go first, if that's okay.
Okay.
On behalf of Sunset and Gordon investors, thank you again for hearing us this afternoon. As you recall from hearings that were held in July, this is a high-quality, mixed-use project in Hollywood with over 300 residential units, a creative office component, a preservation of the old spaghetti factory facade, a new public park, and a building which will be LEED certified. And this project has numerous public benefits. The major entitlements for this project, including the zone change, the plan amendment, the height district change, were approved by your committee and the City Council in July, about 6 or 7 weeks ago. What's before you today is the tract appeal, although in the appellant's presentation I didn't hear the word tract mentioned at all. The issues raised by the appellants are the same issues that were raised before you in the hearings in July. And on July 10th, 2008, the City Planning Commission held a full public hearing on the tract appeals, the same two appellants. The hearing lasted more than an hour, and the City Planning Commission voted unanimously to deny those appeals. That action of the Planning Commission was further appealed today to your committee and to the City Council. DLA Piper has submitted a letter for the record which responds in writing to the issues raised in the appeals, and that letter was mentioned by Maya in her presentation. This project has widespread community support. There were numerous public meetings and workshops on this project, and the support in the Hollywood community includes support from the Hollywood Chamber, from local neighborhood groups, and from neighboring property owners. In addition, we have support from the mayor's office, from the council office, and from the CRA board, as you know, because the CRA did approve this project as part of funding a program for the park. I'm going to keep this very brief and just say that we urge you today to recommend to the City Council that the tract appeals be denied. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, we have two more.
Tom.
Please come on up.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Cody, Sunset and Gordon Investors. Thank you for hearing this matter. You have before you, I think, by any measure, an exemplary project with meaningful community benefits. And I'm not going to go through those in any detail. I think you've heard them all before. And we have treated this project, really the preparation, the process, and the project with the highest standard of care, and the care that it's due considering the nature of the community and the region that we're building in. And we will continue to do that for as long as it takes, and you certainly have our commitment to that. We were in front of you back in July. This matter was before the Planning Commission. It's been before you. It's been before City Council, and has received a lot of deliberation, a lot of scrutiny, which I think is appropriate considering the nature of the project, and indeed at every turn, at every intersection prevailed, and in almost every case I believe unanimously prevailed on the merits of the project. And in fact, I would say there's not a word in this appeal that you have not only that has not already been considered by this body. I personally, Mr. Blue has yet to show up at any, has yet to testify, has yet to show up at any public hearing at anywhere along the way in our process, which has been going on for over 18 months. I personally have approached the appellant, Mr. Haynes, and I personally have approached his attorney. Our litigator has approached his attorney, and indeed there has been a lawsuit filed by the appellant on this case. And at the time when I approached Mr. Haynes, he said that he could not speak to me without being authorized by his board. He apparently represents a neighborhood association. I sent a letter to Mr. Haynes asking if I could come and meet with his board and explain to them about the project, and perhaps have the opportunity to hear some of their concerns, if they have any concerns, and again, silence. So I would say that we've been very transparent, very inclusive during this process for a period of 2 years, and the door is always open. I would be intrigued and interested in hearing any specificity around any concerns that there are regarding the project. With that, I would say thank you, and I appreciate your consideration, and of course urge you to support the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Cody. Mr. Haynes, I just wanted, just a minute, please. Mr. Haynes, would it be possible to submit a list of the board members that you represent?
Well, the issue here today is the project.
No, I understand that. And just my question to you is, could we see a list of board members that you represent?
Well, the people in let's start from the beginning. I moved here in 1989.
I think it's a simple yes or no.
No, our neighborhood isn't the issue. It's not going to be turned around. The issue is the project.
Sir, you did make a presentation on behalf of the board.
Yes.
It's a simple question. Do you have a list of board members you represent?
It's not a responsibility of us to offer a list of our board members. We're here today. And
So you don't want to submit a list of board members?
No, we're not.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just say, no, you're done. That if we were in court right now, Mr. Reyes, that was a great cross. That was just phenomenal. You should consider a change of career.
Yeah. Okay. Nicole, Serena, please. I apologize for not pronouncing your name correctly.
It's okay. Shahanian.
Okay, thank you.
Nicole Shahanian with the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Hollywood Chamber, which represents over 1,000 businesses in the Hollywood area, I'm here to speak in favor of this project. The proposed development represents a creative model of mixed-use design which will bring much-needed affordable workforce housing to our Hollywood community. As you know, Hollywood is undergoing an amazing renaissance. As Hollywood continues to grow at an unprecedented rate, the need for housing in the Hollywood community will also increase. Our board is very excited about the LEED certified project and the much-needed housing and other benefits that this project will provide to our community and its residents. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. That concludes the public hearing on this matter. Do we have a representative from the council office here? No? Okay. All right, come on up. So my understanding is that the council office and the CRA and the staff has gone through many community hearings on this?
Yes, I believe that's correct. Maya Zaitsevsky, for the record, planning. I just wanted to, just in response to what Mr. Haynes and Ms. Cruz said, this is a hearing for the tract and not a hearing for the previously heard and approved zone change general plan amendment case with the variances. The tract map merely needs to be consistent with what council already approved, and so it's just that the project was determined by City Planning Commission and Council. This was the project that they decided was the best for the site. And as far as the other project, that it was withdrawn, the GTO project, they chose not to develop it at the site, and this developer came in with this proposed project. That's it.
Thank you. Just given the information before us, Councilman, I'm inclined to deny the two appeals filed by Mr. Robert Blue and Doug Haynes, and thereby sustain the entire decision of the Planning Commission approving a vesting tentative tract map number 68501 to permit a one-lot subdivision for a mixed-use development, including a maximum 305 residential condominium units, 28 commercial units, with 523 on-site parking spaces for the property located at 5929 through 5945 Sunset Boulevard and 1512 through 1540 North Gordon Street. And that'll be the action of this committee. Thank you. That concludes this item. So we do have two cards for public comment. And we have Mr. Noel Weiss and Meredith Loeb Angel.
Good afternoon, council members. Noel Weiss, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the fact that apparently on next Tuesday's calendar, I've been advised the SB 1818, the Hubbard lawsuit, and the lawsuit brought by the Environmental and Housing Coalition, I guess, is being set, because we've had some settlement discussions, and that was in June, and the city attorney worked it up. The hope was that we could get it before the break, but apparently now you've scheduled, and I guess Mr. Parks is going to schedule for Monday, so I appreciate the fact that you're moving forward on that. With regard to some related tenant issues here, again, I wasn't here, I guess, for item 17. I guess there was no report, Ms. Greaves advised, but I would just request, Mr. Reyes, maybe next week, there are a couple of tenant issues that the committee needs to be aware of. One, specifically, right now, to make it simple, I would like the Housing Department to be asked why there is no notification of tenants in conversion projects of their right to terminate their lease and collect their relocation money when the tract map has been approved, assuming those tenants were in residence when the tract map application was filed and approved. Now, the Housing Department is not informing the public on this. This is important. The last time we dealt with this, apparently as of last May, there were 90 projects that were approved, condo projects that were approved. And I would just want, as part of the report, to have an opportunity for housing to explain to you, to Mr. Weiss, to Mr. Weezer, and to the public why they're not informing the tenants of these rights. Because, in fact, I was told by Rob Bluchon, a prominent attorney in town in the Valley, that they're misinforming the people, that they don't have any rights. The only right that they can get to relocate is when the notice of termination, thank you for your attention, Mr. Weiss, the Housing Department is misinforming the people. They're saying the only time they get their relocation money is when the notice of termination is filed. That's not the law. Gail Goldberg herself made this an important part of her presentation. So again, Mr. Reyes, with all due respect, I just would like planning, and I would like the Housing Department to explain why they're not doing it, and if they would, please start to do it in their materials. And you weren't in council on Friday, but I did pass out a handout demonstrating. If you got that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Taking the opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. I represent Elsa Cardone. I've known her longer than I've known my husband, and periodically I look at the draft EIRs and the final EIRs for my husband's firm in land use. And one of the concerns and one of the areas I've gotten involved with her is when downtown, in fact in your area, Councilmember Reyes, we've worked with some of your field deputies, but one of the issues is that tenants of buildings exist, and there are no garages to put these people's cars in. So you have a lot of mixed-use stuff going in, a lot of construction, and it's very difficult to deal with that. They don't get notice of, draft EIRs or developments because they're renters, from what I can tell.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the things that happens. They don't get to be involved in the public participation process to work this out. What I've been trying to do is watch, the draft EIRs and comment to the developer when I do see something come up. But it's a serious issue. These people have no even reasonable paid parking located in some of the downtown areas. They're going through huge transitions. And then the other thing is that I've been noting in some of the approvals, some of the parking is at times valet, so you have to have a specific person doing the parking because there's limited parking, so you have to do double parking. And so some of the people that come visit the building start using a lot of the street parking, so residents of the area are even further impacted on parking with that, not to mention the construction. So I've encouraged her to continue to work with your office specifically and try to deal with some of these pressures.
And I appreciate what you're saying, and I do know on several cases we work with the developer to set aside some spaces, to work through their construction schedule to see if there's placement that could be used for the vehicles during these interim stages. But the bottom line is, in my district, I'm up to, in certain pockets, up to 70,000 people per square mile.
It's huge.
And the place is designed based on planning standards that go back to the 1920s and 30s. So it's designed to fit about 6,000. And so we are dealing with incredible pressures in certain pockets of the city, and to reach a solution requires some creativity. So I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Okay, this concludes this meeting. Thank you very much.